The handwriting on the envelope made my breath catch in my throat. Jordan, the one person I'd convinced myself I'd never hear from again. The one who'd vanished when everything between us felt full of possibility. Suddenly, memories flooded back, afternoons at the playground with my son Liam laughing on the swings, long conversations at our favorite coffee spot where we'd shared our dreams, the comfort of his presence beside me. All of it returned in a rush I wasn't prepared for, my mind spinning with questions I didn't know I wanted answered. I wanted to throw the letter away unopened, to pretend it had never arrived. But my hands had other ideas. Unfolding the paper, reading words that made my pulse quicken and my stomach knot. He'd written to apologize, to explain why he'd left, to ask if we could see each other again. Simple words, but weighted with everything we'd left unsaid. I felt Liam behind me, tugging at my shirt, his small voice cutting through my thoughts, asking who the letter was from. I smiled at him, despite the tightness in my throat. Just someone from a long time ago, sweetheart. Nothing to worry about. But inside, fear and hope tangled together in a way that made my hands tremble. Could I let him back into our lives? Could I risk opening my heart after it had been hurt before? I thought about the pain I'd endured, the nights I'd cried alone, the mornings I'd forced myself to be strong for Liam. This letter was more than just a message. It was a choice, a challenge, a door I could walk through if I had the courage. I set the letter down and looked out the window at the sunset, painting the sky in shades that mirrored my own confusion. I'd thought I was ready to move forward, to leave the past where it belonged. But just as I reached for my phone to respond, the doorbell rang, sharp and sudden, making me jump. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, there he stood, Jordan himself, holding a modest bouquet of wildflowers, looking like he'd stepped directly out of my memories, wearing that same hesitant smile and those eyes I remembered far too well. Time seemed to stop. My heart leaped while my stomach dropped, and I knew with absolute certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. I remembered the first time we'd met. It was at the Independent bookshop on Elm Street, where I used to browse after dropping Liam at preschool. I'd been reaching for the last copy of a novel I'd been hunting for months, when his hand had brushed against mine. He'd laughed softly, apologized, but I'd noticed the warmth in his eyes immediately. We'd started talking about books, then about aspirations, then about life itself. Something had clicked, something that made me feel like I'd known him far longer than those few minutes. We'd spent afternoons wandering city streets, drinking endless cups of coffee, laughing until our faces ached. Liam would sometimes join us, and Jordan would kneel down to help him with his shoes or make him giggle with silly voices. It had felt like a perfect world where nothing could hurt us, but life had other plans. I'd gotten a job opportunity across town with longer hours. Jordan had family obligations that pulled him in a different direction. We'd promised to stay connected, to write, to call, but distance had crept in silently. Days became weeks, weeks became months, messages went unanswered. Calls were missed. Slowly the warmth faded into silence. I'd told myself it was just life. Sometimes people grow apart, but it left a hollow ache in my chest that never quite healed. I'd blamed him. He'd blamed circumstances, yet I carried the memory of our connection like something precious and fragile. I remembered one evening when we'd sat beneath the old maple tree by the canal. He'd held my hand and whispered, "I'll never forget this." And I'd believed him. I'd believed in us. That promise had carried me through lonely nights and the quiet struggles of single parenthood. Now, standing at my door, seeing him there with that same uncertain smile and familiar eyes, I realized a truth I'd never fully admitted. I'd missed him. Liam had missed him too. Somehow, even in the silence, our bond had never truly broken. Then I noticed something in his expression, a shadow of guilt, a hesitation I hadn't seen before, and suddenly I remembered a detail I'd forgotten. A letter he'd supposedly written years ago that never reached me. A letter that might explain everything. The sudden distance, the missed calls, the silence, the misunderstanding that had torn us apart. My heart ached, not just for the lost years, but for the truth that had been waiting quietly all this time. A truth that could change everything between us if I was brave enough to hear it. Jordan stood on my doorstep, the fading sunlight casting a gentle glow across his face. For a long moment, I couldn't speak, my chest tight with memories I'd thought I'd buried. Liam peeked from behind my leg, his small hand gripping mine. I could see both curiosity and caution in his expression. Jordan smiled gently at him. "Hello there." His voice, that same soothing sound I remembered so well. I stepped aside, gesturing for him to come in. As he crossed the threshold, I noticed the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with something new, something more mature and grounded. We sat in the living room, the silence heavy but not entirely uncomfortable. "Why did you come?" I finally asked. "After all this time?" He hesitated, glancing at Liam, then back at me. I could see the internal conflict playing across his features. Finally, he said, "I needed to see you. I needed to say what I should have said years ago." I nodded slowly, unsure if I was ready to hear it. My fingers fidgeted with the edge of a cushion as he continued. "I never meant to disappear. There were things I had to handle, things I thought I could resolve before reaching out. I wrote letters you never received. I wanted to explain, to stay connected, but life kept getting in the way." I felt the weight of his words pressing against my chest, longing and regret mingling together in a way that made breathing difficult. Liam shuffled closer, breaking the tension, and I reached for his hand, feeling that grounding warmth that reminded me why I'd survived all the pain. I looked back at Jordan, and for a moment the years melted away, the hurt, the distance, the silence. Time seemed to fold, and I saw him not as the person who'd left, but as the one who'd remained in my heart. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes searching mine, and I saw something vulnerable and real there. A plea for forgiveness, or perhaps a chance to begin again. I wanted to tell him everything, how I'd suffered and grown, how I'd loved and feared, but the words caught in my throat, and all I could do was nod, feeling the ache of every lost day. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small object, a silver compass charm I'd given him long ago, the one I'd assumed he'd lost. He handed it to me with a quiet smile. I held it, the metal cool in my palm, but the memory burning bright inside me. "I never forgot you," he said softly. "I never stopped caring." My heart pounded with a mixture of hope and fear. I wanted to believe him, but I wasn't sure if I could fully trust what he was saying. Just as I opened my mouth to respond, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was a photo of Jordan with a woman I didn't recognize, both smiling, happy. The caption read, "Wish you were here." Suddenly the room felt smaller, my heart heavier. I realized my decision wasn't just about forgiving him or letting him back into our lives. It was about understanding what had really happened during all those years, and whether the truth I was about to uncover would bring us closer or finally close the door forever. I finally asked the question I'd been holding back for years. "Why did you really leave?" Jordan took a deep breath, his hands clasped tightly in front of him, his eyes looking everywhere but directly at me. I waited, my chest tight, the air between us heavy with everything unspoken. Then he spoke, slowly and deliberately. "I never stopped thinking about you. I never stopped wanting to be there. But when I tried to reach out, everything fell apart. My father got seriously ill. I had to take care of him. And by the time I was ready to come back, I thought you'd moved on. I thought it was too late." My throat burned. My eyes stung. But I stayed quiet, listening, feeling the words wash over me like a tide I couldn't resist. "I wasn't sure I could manage everything," he continued. "There were letters I wrote that never reached you, messages that got lost, phone numbers that changed. Life just kept getting in the way. I realized in that moment it had never been betrayal. It had been circumstance, fear, and terrible timing. Tears welled up as I remembered all the nights I'd blamed, all the lonely mornings I'd forced myself to smile for Liam's sake. I saw his face now, the regret and hope mixed together, mirroring my own complicated feelings. I wanted to shake him, to demand why he hadn't tried harder. Yet all I could do was hold on to the pieces of my heart he hadn't broken. "Why didn't you fight harder for us?" I asked softly. He whispered, "I did try, but I wasn't brave enough. I was terrified of making things worse. I had no idea how deeply I'd hurt you." Then he finally looked directly at me, his eyes raw and honest. I saw the boy I'd loved and the man he'd become, and it hurt in a way that made me ache with both longing and fear. Liam peeked around my leg, sensing the tension. I realized I wanted to protect him, but also to let him see that people can return, that love can survive. I swallowed hard and said, "I don't know if I can forgive you yet." Jordan nodded, understanding, but still hopeful. Then he reached out his hand slowly, as if asking permission. I felt a flicker of hope mixed with hesitation. Just as I was about to take it, my phone buzzed again. Another message from that same unknown number. This time it was a photo of Jordan laughing with a woman, standing closer than casual friends should, smiling as if I didn't exist. My heart froze. The room seemed colder. I realized that to move forward, I had to decide whether to trust the truth he'd just shared, or whether the shadow of that photo would destroy everything before it could even begin. I stared at the photo on my phone, my chest tight with hurt and confusion. Jordan reached for my hand slowly, his fingers brushing mine, warm and steady. I looked up at him, searching his eyes for truth. Finally he spoke. "I know that picture looks bad, but it's not what you think. She's my cousin Elena. We were at a family reunion. I should have explained sooner." I saw the sincerity in his gaze, years of regret and longing laid bare. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of anger and doubt lift just a little. Liam tugged at my sleeve, smiling, and I realized he'd never stopped hoping for this moment, for all of us to find our way back together. Jordan gestured toward the balcony. "Can we talk outside?" I nodded, and we stepped out into the evening air, the sun low in the sky, painting everything gold. We stood there silently for a moment. Then he handed me an envelope, worn at the edges. "I want you to have this," he said quietly. I opened it slowly, the familiar handwriting making my heart flutter. Inside was a letter he'd written years ago, the one that never reached me, every word filled with love, apology, and hope. It was a bridge across all the years we'd lost. Tears ran down my cheeks as I read parts of it aloud, for both Liam and Jordan to hear, his words carrying the warmth I'd missed for so long. I felt the hurt begin to dissolve into something tender, a mixture of relief and new beginnings. Jordan gently placed his hand over mine as we read together, the breeze catching Liam's hair and ruffling it softly, as if nature itself was urging us forward. I looked at Jordan and saw not just the man I'd loved, but the one who'd never stopped caring. I saw the possibilities of forgiveness, of trust rebuilt, of a future we could choose together. Liam laughed softly, holding the edge of the letter. I realized then that love had never really left us. It had been waiting patiently, quietly, for the right moment, for the right courage to let it back in. In that moment, with the golden light surrounding us, the letter in our hands, and the small hand of my son holding mine, I understood something profound. Some connections are stronger than time, stronger than distance, stronger than mistakes. As Jordan looked at me with hope and quiet reverence, the letter that had waited so many years had finally reached its destination. And as the stars began to emerge in the darkening sky above us, I knew with certainty that some